Okay, well, it is 6:30 p.m. and Central Standard Time, and it is Tuesday, September the 11th, 2018. And boy, September 11th, I've been thinking about that today. I remember um, 17 years ago what happened. Uh, I was teaching, actually, as I do now, except I was teaching special education at that time and doing some substitute teaching, as a matter of fact, at a grammar school. When all of a sudden people came in and they started telling us about um, there was a problem in New York, and uh, turned on the TV, and we, of course, turned on and we saw uh, something unbelievable before our eyes. I had never witnessed as a person. Um, One plane hit the first building, and I thought, oh well, that plane is crashed. That's it. Then a second later, the building collapsed. Then a second plane hit the next building and repeated the same thing. It was just like something out of a movie or something, or something you'd see if you saw maybe a clip or something of demolition, and it changed the whole way that we live in the United States of America. I wasn't alive in 1941. I was born in 50 when Pearl Harbor happened, and they tell me it devastated people as well. But this that happened September the 11th was a new thing. This is the first time a really big catastrophic thing happened that was terrorist oriented in the United States. There was one before that, the not Mississippi, Oklahoma City bombing that took place. But even and everybody thought that was uh, bad. But boy, when the World Trade Centers went down, it was even worse. And so, so we take time today to remember that. Again, people still continue to um, remember where they were that day. So anyway, we're going to get started today with this lecture. This is the final lecture. This is the final week. Um, not some, but every single assignment has to be submitted by midnight or 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, Friday. Now, Central Standard Time. Those of you on the East Coast, you shouldn't have a problem because of the fact that it would be 9:30 your time. But I'm not 9:30. I'm sorry, but 12:30 your time. And not 12. What am I talking about? It would be basically almost 1 o'clock or 12:59. So anyway, the point of the matter is at the end of the day, you must have all assignments clocked in order to be graded. Anything that comes after that, we are not allowed to grade. And I encourage students, like I said again, don't wait till the last minute. I've been saying this the whole quarter, and here we are. So anyway, let's get into what we're going to deal with today. Let's go right into sharing our screen here. Okay, and you can see this. Okay, I'm gonna move this little thing up here. All right. So you can see my instructor information as I scroll down. You can see that this is it, our last lecture today, taking place 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. or close to that time. And again, all the other lectures are posted here as well as the final lecture will be posted there for people to see as well. Plus, I will be emailing this as well. This announcement here really won't affect us. It says WebEx recordings will be unavailable from 9 p.m. Friday, September 14th through Sunday. Well, it won't really affect us because we don't, when you see your recordings from me, they're not WebEx recordings. I convert the WebEx recordings that we're on right now to MP4, upload them to YouTube, and then I send you a link. So that doesn't create a problem for us as we had this happen before. So I point that to all my students. So now let's look at what the Week 6 announcement is. Final module, drug-related criminal activity, treatment and rehabilitation strategies will be discussed today. Chapter 10 of the book, along with the PowerPoints that I sent you to help you, and the activities treatment challenges related to opioid addiction and drug treatment and rehabilitation programs. We've kind of covered that quite a bit this quarter, and so then remind you that this is our final lecture today. Discussion assignment, methadone clinics. Many of you have submitted very good initial posts. They're due, though, by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time tonight if you have not. And then by Friday, notice the note, by Friday, September 14th, not September 15th, Saturday as normally, but the 14th. Then complete the final exam, which is timed. Again, I still all over the place remind you, Friday, September 14th, 2018. That is it. Then the final reminder here is that the Term 2 quarter officially ends 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time this September 14th. None of my students have an excuse to say that they missed it. And then if you have a chance, please complete the end of quarter student evaluations that you received in your email. And then I shared with you about why adversity is the springboard to success. So you understand that from week 1. Right now I'm dealing with some adversity while I'm doing this last week of classes, something that's really pressing on me, but you know what? It's just like everything else. I just keep moving forward, even with the adversity. It might slow me down, but it's not going to knock me out. So here we are down here, clicking again, and it repeats what I have already shared with you on the calendar. And then, oh, I don't know why there's 2 there, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So your reading assignment, and then your initial post, and then the lecture today, and then notice there's nothing after the 14th because you got 2 assignments that are due. You've got your reply post, and then the final exam. So this week, you really don't have a whole lot to do except get ready for this final exam. All right? And I am going to just talk a little bit about what's involved with that. All right? I've been talking about it the whole quarter, but I'm going to go into it a little bit. Once again, that Drugs and Crimes course guide should have been helpful to you the whole quarter in terms of completing written assignments. All right, your discussion post, then your final exam. It's going to be multiple choice. It's an hour long, and you'll be given alerts as you had before. Now, once time expires, your exam will be automatically submitted. Now, you're supposed to be uh, books closed and everything based upon the academic misconduct policy in the syllabus that we went over during week one or open house, and you acknowledge that you will do that. Now, the test itself will cover pretty much 4, 5, and 6. As you going back to recall, just to bring it back to your attention, just clicking for a minute, the quiz that you had in week 3 pretty much covered the first half. So therefore, uh, be aware that this will cover pretty much what you have gone through in the last 3 weeks. Now, be aware of this, that everything that you covered in the last 3 weeks is cumulative, which means that the information that you gathered from the first 3 weeks should carry over to the second 3 weeks. And so you should, most of my students do pretty well, even with the exam. Some get, nervous about it being a timed exam, but you already know that that's part of academic life that you face. Not just academically, but you'll face that quite frequently. So do the best you can. Look at the materials that you've been given, and particularly the PowerPoints. As I was telling one student, that those PowerPoints that are used in this particular course, along with another course that I teach, Introduction to Criminal Law, they're excellent with reviewing what you have covered the whole quarter. And they're key in helping you to perform well. But most of my students usually come out pretty well on the finals in any of the classes I take, because I've been preparing you since day one to get ready for that. Okay, so there is no grade rubric for that. It's whether you get the answers right, and take time and read the material very carefully, read the questions, and don't allow yourself to be tricked. Trust me, you guys already know most of the stuff that is in there already, all the way up to the last week. So treatment challenges related to opioid addiction, drug treatment and rehabilitation programs. We're going to pretty much deal with those there, okay? And that's it. So let's go right into treatment challenges. We've been talking about this pretty much. And we already know, just from, those of you who, and that should be everybody, who's familiar with Chasing the Dragon that we went over last week, which I provided to you an opportunity. If you didn't do any other way, if you looked at the entire lecture, then you also saw the video. And the video gave some very clear examples of how people end up hooked on drugs, and how the opioid crisis has come into being. And so this first statement right here in our little section here that I'm looking at says, opioid addiction is powerful and life-consuming. Well, you know that. Probably you, as I've said before, have witnessed someone either in your family, or either you found even yourself, or either you had a friend or a classmate or a colleague at work, a member of your organization, church, clubs, whatever, who have been affected by opioid addiction. And you saw last week in the movie Chasing the Dragon how this just basically tore the lives of these people apart, how they were converted to um, really brilliant people, or either good people, not to bad people, but to people who were, I call it sick, and then found themselves um, passing away from opioid addiction. Or, as I usually say, even if you don't pass away, you're what we call the walking dead, because your quality of life is extremely uh, diminished, and that it is very difficult to overcome uh, opioid addiction, as I again uh, pointed out to you in that book that I have. Got it right here again. Um, from Dope to Hope, A Man in Recovery. Then Tim Ryan. This book was, I mean, it was like all just a basic uh, story about a man and his life and how he dealt with the challenges. And so the loss of his son, um, him himself feeling guilty that because he was a counselor who had personally recovered from using drugs, that he was not able to help his own child. So now he's living with that for the rest of his life. And people who are hooked on these opioids are oftentimes uh, kicked to the curb. Nobody wants to be around them, and they're ostracized, and it creates more of a desire for them to not even seek any help, but to feel that all hope is gone, and ultimately find themselves in a position where um, they increase their activities and result in OD. So the mind changes, and then your body takes control away from you. You don't have a free will anymore, and you just uh, find yourself with so many problematic things that happen to even you, your body, as it says here: restlessness, uh, muscle and bone pain, insomnia, diarrhea, vomiting, cold flashes, sweating, and the list goes on. These are just a few things, and there are things that that you can take, um, such as methadone, that lessen the symptoms of withdrawing, because your body goes through withdrawal if you don't, you know, use it anymore, and you find it. But all of these are basic problems. There is a debate about methadone, which many of you are aware of, as that is the discussion post assignment for this week, that it is something that there are good and bad things about it, and it is actually something that a person can get addicted to as well. And so it's called a fix, just like the drug itself is a fix. And the clinics are all over the place, and individuals get this methadone as a way to help those individuals to cope. so that they can operate as normal individuals, going to work, going to school, and other things. But the only thing that you should be aware of is methadone does not cure you. Only thing that can cure you, if you can overcome the withdrawals, is to stop. That is it. And as you've been able to discover through that movie, Chasing the Dragon, most people don't make it. Most don't. The number of people who make it are very small in terms of success stories. But even those who do make it will tell you it even has um, altered their life so that it never is the same. It never was the way it was before they got addicted to opioids. And so what it really amounts to is the individual personality, lifestyle, um, even family structure, because your family becomes pretty much those who are in the same stage that you are, and it's just devastating. That's the one word. So, so anyway, there's a whole lot of issues that come into play when we start talking about treatment, and particularly when we deal with methadone. Remember that Noxolone and those things are not the same as methadone. Those are drugs, or what we call arresting the symptoms, and can stop the effects of the drugs. However, it's very expensive, and then the other part is that it's like playing Russian roulette with your life. You'll have the opioid in your body taking control, and then what this does is this basically stops it. But as you've been able to discover that individuals, even with that, they can have their heart stop. They can end up going into cardiac and actually literally die, but are brought back to life. And you've been able to discover and learn that those individuals go right back to doing the same thing. But that's because of what they relate to at that particular point. So it is a tough thing. Talks about recovery actions necessary, is seldom more than a half-hearted attempt. That's pretty much what I just said. Even intensive counseling, attending meetings, having people who are your sponsor to hold you accountable can still not save you. And look what it says. Some studies indicate that over 70% of people relapse after they stop even using methadone. So again, methadone then becomes the air you breathe. It becomes the thing that you find. So this video that we have here, Canopy, is just a little bit of it. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I'm going to. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's see. Let's see if it's going to work today. Okay. Let's see if we can get it up here. Yeah, let's see. Sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. And it looks like today is one of those times when it is not. Okay. Okay, let's get out of that. Okay, let me go ahead and stop sharing that, and then come back and go back into it. see if I can get out of it now. Let's see if I can. Sometimes you get into these things and you cannot get out. Okay, let's go back to. Okay, it's not working. Okay, I don't want to hit that because that's going to knock us out of this session. I'm going to try to close it. And okay, there we go. Okay, so it looks like we're not going to be able to. So I want to try it again. So you just get a chance to go take a look at it, and you might be able to do better. Let me try one more time with this link, because it may work better with the link. There we go. Okay, let me open this and let me log in. Let's see if it's going to let me in with this one. Try that one. This should do it. Oh, that's not it. Let's see if that works. And that's not it. Here we go. Okay, good. So there it is. I don't think you can hear that. Can you hear it now?
Tonight on Frontline, it was like a wave of heroin. A 2-hour special report.
We're not going to look at the whole thing because it's an hour.
Inside,
But just a little bit of this.
not only see as criminal justice problem, but as a public health issue for police and social workers on the ground.
People are going to use drugs. Let's make it safe.
Can you hear it pretty clear?
The personal battles.
Just leave for a while, but this is the thing about treatment.
Okay, let's see.
It's not a magic bullet.
And the new face of addiction.
I will not let this kill me.
Frontline investigates this very different war on drugs.
Is that better?
From sending people to jail.
And if it's working,
you're left with the most fundamental question: where do you send your kid for treatment?
tonight on Frontline,
Sort of.
chasing heroin.
Tonight's program contains mature content which may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Okay.
There are some alarming new numbers out from the CDC showing a dramatic rise of the heroin epidemic.
Painkillers is an expensive habit. Many now turning to a cheap way to treat them.
Heroin overdose deaths nearly quadrupled.
It's been creeping up on us for a long time. America's heroin problem.
The sudden rise in heroin overdoses is occurring in cities big and
Overdoses from heroin and other opioids now kill more than 27,000 people a year. And the numbers keep rising.
authorities say the drug is increasingly making its way to wealthy suburbs and into the hands of young Americans.
In the last 12 months, have you done speedballs?
Yes.
Out of controls?
Yes.
Heroin by itself?
Yes.
Last 3 months, have you done pain meds? Oxycycline?
No.
And how many times have you overdosed from opiates in your life?
Never.
And how many times have you witnessed someone else overdose from opiates?
3 times.
Well,
the recording itself is pretty clear. I can hear it real clear. But
David, you play that? Dude, here, that's clear.
you can see it real clear though.
Says she first tried smoking heroin when she was a teenager.
Okay.
When I was 14, I tried heroin, and it just like made everything feel like safe and okay. Did I give you enough things? I think I got really trapped in it because, I mean, I guess I didn't know too much about what addiction was. Thank you. And it just became so second nature. It consumed me.
She moved to
You
injecting
can
by
see
the time
clearly
she
the
was
pictures
16.
though, right?
I was friends with this girl who was like 24, and she was shooting up right, like that's how she did it. And I just was kind of interested in it, and I asked her to hit me one time.
Christina is now 7 years into her addiction.
It's just so insane what this drug like can make you do. Like it literally has a brain, and it shares mine, you know?
Right now, how much heroin is in your system?
Probably like $40 worth.
So what determines how much you use?
Well, the number one thing that determines how much I use is how much money I have or how much dope I have.
There are many different reasons why people turn to heroin. 4 years ago, Johnny Bousquet, 38, says he started using to cope with the breakup of his marriage.
I felt like it alleviated the pain that I was going through. It just made me feel like I could make it through that moment. And eventually I needed it to get through every moment.
Johnny's mother was also a heroin addict. She was gone by the time he was 19.
One day, me and my sister, we found her dead in her room with a needle in her arm. She lost her battle with heroin. And I know she loved us, and I know she really cared about us. And I would always wonder if she loved heroin more than she loved us.
He's now living in a homeless shelter and struggling to stay clean.
At least a few times a day, I think, man, it would be a really good time to get loaded right now. You know, you can pull through and be okay. Or even just get a little bit high, that'll be fine. And then something else takes over, and then next thing you know, it's 2 days later. I've just been, like, fighting that. You know, I can't seem to get a hold of myself no matter how hard I try.
How's the street look to you tonight?
Right here it's pretty quiet. When we turn the corner, it might be different. Are you taking a right, Felix? Yes. Okay.
As the heroin epidemic has spread, cities and states have grown desperate to come up with solutions. Here in Seattle, beat cops are 4 years into a radical experiment to deal with drug use on their streets.
Cops. I hate that. Don't you? Oh, I want you to do me a favor. Do me a favor. Stop moving. Stop moving. Okay, good. Because when you're moving, I don't know what you're doing. I guess. And when you stop moving, I got you. You're getting well. Not a big deal. All right, I'm not going to jam you up. I just, we got to find out who you are, okay? Cool.
The girl on the ground just is getting well. She's shooting heroin. Don't cry, babe. We don't care.
These officers are making fewer arrests. They are more likely to refer addicts they encounter to social services.
Where's the syringe? Because I want to be safe.
So you've become a social worker.
We are social workers.
You are social workers.
Yep.
But
yeah, how many?
listening to you now, we say, gee, you're taking an awfully gentle approach.
We could not incarcerate these people or arrest our way out of the problem. You would arrest a person, they'd be in jail for 20 or 30 days. They would get sober. They would start using again. We continue to arrest them, and then they would use and continue to arrest.
How much do you use a day? Okay. And how long have you been using? I'm not putting you in jail. Are you a meth user too? Do you have any desire to get on methadone and get well, or? If you have a problem, come and see me at this office. I'll give you something to eat. I'll let you call your parents. We'll sit down and we'll have a talk. Do you still need that cooker? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
The most recent surge of heroin abuse has altered our approach to addiction and our views of the war on drugs. Cops and prosecutors and epidemiologists, public health nurses, county coroners, all of this is being fought by really anonymous folks all across the country because this epidemic is also the quietest epidemic. It's filled with shame. Obvious overdose, known history of heroin use, then using heroin today. He was found unconscious. They kind of roused him. They're going to start the You don't have a lot of violence. People die alone in a McDonald's bathroom toilet. And then when the people die, when the kids die, the parents are so mortified, so ashamed that they could be quiet too, and the thing is left to perpetrate and spread. How did this epidemic begin? It's a crisis 30 years in the making.
Bottom line, too many Americans are suffering from too much pain, and doctors aren't doing enough to stop it. In this country, there was a long-running puritanical attitude towards pain, and it resulted in almost a barbaric undertreatment of pain, particularly when it came to people with cancer.
There had to be better treatment for people in serious pain. So there was a whole effort to open up minds to allow hospice care and good pain management for people with cancer. And then that spread into AIDS because people with AIDS often had very serious pain problems.
Doctors had long avoided prescribing opioid painkillers for fear of addicting their patients. That changed with the emergence of the hospice movement.
That movement collides with an opportunistic drug company in the form of Purdue Pharma. They see the opportunity to expand the use of these drugs beyond the cancer wards, kind of into the mainstream of medicine. And the drug that becomes the vehicle through which they do that is a drug called OxyContin.
OxyContin is one of America's new prescription wonder drugs. It's a powerful painkiller.
OxyContin was not really a new drug. The molecule had been around since 1916. What they did is they took this old existing drug and they introduced a time release mechanism into it. So that it would be significantly less addictive because it wouldn't be released up front all at once. So that's how they pitched it to the FDA.
Purdue Pharma marketed it to doctors who were prescribing drugs for all manner of ailments to common ordinary folks who were not dying of cancer. To them, OxyContin initially looked like a godsend. It looked like this wonder drug. Like all of a sudden, we can give this and we don't need to prescribe like it in a day.
There is no question that the marketing of OxyContin was the most aggressive marketing of a narcotic drug ever undertaken by a pharmaceutical producer. The FDA allowed them to make the claim that because it was a long-acting drug, it might, the stress being on the word might, be less prone to addiction and abuse than traditional drugs. There was absolutely no science to support this idea. Zero.
Well, I had to get out of that. As you can see, it's pretty devastating. So you get a chance to go look at that in detail. You did hear them. You did see once again something that you saw last week, and that was the problem of individuals finding themselves stuck. And you saw how law enforcement responded. The people saw the police; they thought they were going to jail. And you heard what the police officer said. She basically said, "What good does it do to arrest these people and lock them up? They go to jail, they stay in jail, and it's problematic." And so what happens is, to ask if they still need their cooker. But I mean, what they were really doing was recognizing the fact that if the individual they did take the cooker, guess what? They get another cooker. So the key thing that they were trying to remove was the actual drugs themselves. And it's like trying to climb a grease pole. You know, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And looking at it from the perspective, you remember I talked about in this class Senate Bill 3023. You remember I discussed that some weeks ago, and that's kind of the kind of approach that you just saw a few minutes ago. Is that instead of locking these people up, there they were committing crimes. They were in possession of drugs. But notice what these people were doing. They weren't dealers. They were users. And because they were users, it was like taking a person who has a cold and saying, okay, we're not going to treat you for the cold. We're not going to help you to get over the cold. We're going to lock you up until, the cold goes away. Yeah. Well, you know what? I got news for you. It's like that. When I was in law enforcement myself, and I was in a town that the south suburbs of Chicago, which was called the crack cocaine capital, a town called Ford Heights. It wasn't opioid. It was crack cocaine. But we had some of the same kind of things that we saw over and over and over. We would come upon people, and they were just getting high. That's what they were doing. And then they would say things like, am I going to jail? Am I going to jail? Says, well, with the war on drugs, remember the approach was, okay, take the drugs away, arrest a person for possession, put them in jail, keep them in jail, release them back out, get them a minimal amount of treatment, like slapping a Band-Aid over it, and then let them out again. So when they got out again, what are they going to do? They go right back to doing the same thing. So, and you're right. It's a circular. It's a circle. It's a cycle. It's like a merry-go-round. They go round and round and round, and finally, they will find situations. And then when you start talking about things like trying to help individuals. Yeah, it's new and interesting approach, but here's the issue in a nutshell. It goes to what I said from day one about this whole issue, is that the war on drugs we are losing because that's trying to cut off the supply. Remember I said before, the way that it's going to actually operate best is if we cut off the customers. Unfortunately, the way customers are cut off is not by law enforcement, but by ODs that are not able to be brought back to life. And notice this, the pictures that you saw, I mean, it should make you cringe to see somebody take a needle and stick it up to their neck. I myself personally, in the neck, it just, you sit there and you look at that, you can't help but just do this, something like this, because of the fact that it's just, imagine it. Let me tell you something, guys. This man right here that's teaching this class, there's no way in the world I could do that. If I was a diabetic and I had to take insulin and shoot myself up, type 1, I keep you in my prayers on that one, because that's something that you have to work with. So you understand needles. But the whole thing in a nutshell is this, is that you find yourself in a situation, like I said, I couldn't do it. I could not. You guys have heard of Walter Payton, right? You heard of Walter Payton, who used to play for the Bears. He was one of the greatest running backs, football. He was a friend of mine personally. I knew him, and Walter and I used to talk one on one. And one of the things that he shared with me, because I asked him one time, "What's his greatest fear?" And you know what he said? A needle. A needle. And it was interesting with him being an athlete, and then ironically he passed away very sick. But the point of the matter is that he once said to me in a kind of joking fashion, but it made sense. He said, "If someone pulled a needle on me, I would give them all of my money. But if they pulled a gun on me, I would give them a battle for it." That's just how he was. Well, yours truly is like that too. When I go and have blood drawn, I have to get the butterfly. You know what the butterfly is, right? The little small thing like they use for kids. That's what I have to use. This man right here you're looking at, I had to take a test for an insurance policy that I was getting, and they had to draw blood. And I told them I didn't want to see. I turned my head. Every year I go for my physical, and one of the things that they do is they draw blood. I cry like a baby, and I'm not kidding. And what I'm trying to say is this, put it in perspective. What you see is these people injecting. Let me tell you something. You just saw some things. There's even worse. Let me tell you something that I've seen. I've seen people OD when I was in the law enforcement business. OD with needles in their private parts. Males and females. They're laying dead. Now, just think about that. That's just, you get a picture of that in your mind. You really don't want that picture, but I'm trying to explain to you guys so you understand that this is how it is. Now, let me say this to you. Yeah, in between the toes, any place that they can stick it. That's the whole bottom issue. But listen to this. These are not people who are cast outs. They become cast outs. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're other professional people, nurses, teachers, entertainers. Oh, you and I both know entertainers and athletes constantly find themselves in this dilemma. But the point of the matter is that what happens is that needle takes away their quality of life. And then you know what else happens too. Because needles are shared and they use them over and over, that's how you get hepatitis, that's how you get AIDS, that's how you get all kinds of issues that go along with the addiction in itself. So it just complicates things. So what happens is you begin to look at the body of that person. You saw the skin on those people, and you could see the look in their eyes. They were open, but they were dead. They were breathing dead people, and it's sad and tragic. So what I'm saying to you is that, and then they talked about the use of oxycodone and how that's operating. I cut it off there, but you know about that because we've talked about that in previous weeks. The point of the matter is that it's just bad all the way around. Let's go to some of these programs, these so-called 12 steps. You know what? Let me say this to you. One of the first things, and in terms of any of these programs, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and this example here is the AA 12-step program. Do you recognize the fact that most people, they're not counting steps. They're not going through the steps. They're, in a way, what's their most important thing? Getting that fix. And that's why, chasing heroin, chasing the dragon is what the title of this activity is because of the fact that they're so inundated in it that these programs really are like Yeah. Just give me the drug. Give me the methadone. Give me this. And the point of the matter is that they're out of control. What are you going to do? You can't shoot them and kill them. You don't shoot and kill people that are hurt. These people are hurt. These people are sick. It's an illness. And so we try to do various forms of treatment. And we lose way more than we end up successfully coming out. So let's just look at a few of these points here before we conclude. It says drug treatment options for drug and substance abuse come from friends to inpatient. So you're going to be an inpatient, and everybody responds differently to treatment, and there's no one way that helps a person. It says long-term inpatient residential treatment may involve a stay of almost a year or half a year, and that's not uncommon. And so the point of the matter is that you find yourself in a situation where those individuals are going to have all kinds of issues that they're wrestling with. Even a short-term period is 30 days. Now you think about you being taken out of things that you do on a regular basis, and for 30 days, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're trying to get short-term treatment. And how many of you recognize that after those 30 days are up, then that's really like what we call a stay of execution. They go right back and find themselves in it. And people say, well, see, we tried. No, the dynamics of this whole thing that you have to gather and understand is that it's not just one thing that's going to change it. It's going to be consistent approach in terms of it. It's kind of like going through school, going through college. You're going to try to do your assignments, then you're going to have something happen, maybe with a family member, a child. I just got a message from a student who was telling me that they were having trouble getting their assignments in, and they've been battling the whole quarter. And here we are at the end, and they send me a message saying that for the whole quarter, they've been battling with the loss of a child that had happened just early on, and then a loss of a grandfather or dad or something. And, they hadn't really done a lot of work. But here's what I'm trying to get across to you, is that individual now is in a position where I can do. They asked me for extra work, and I said, I can't give you extra work because I have 130-something students. I can't do that. I got to grade all these assignments by Monday. Not being cold-hearted, but here's what I'm trying to get across to you, is that life happens in these situations, and we recognize that. It's the same process that people face when they're trying to overcome or kick the habit of this monkey on their back that's dealing with them. So you have these outpatient counseling sessions to reduce or stop substance abuse, give them other things. But the key thing that's going to really help the individual is if the individual goes through, and they're going to go through the changes of the withdrawals and make it through the withdrawals. If they make it through the withdrawals, they increase the chance of overcoming the substance abuse. I didn't say it goes away, but the chance of overcoming it. But it says at the bottom, before I get to these steps, for opioid addiction, medicated assisted, we've been talking about methadone, bupropion, or naloxone play a critical role in the treatment. But the problem is that these medications, they just deal with the symptoms of withdrawal, but it helps in terms of trying to recover, but the way to recover. Now, notice this. it talks about these steps all the way to 12. It says, first one, it says you admit you are powerless. It says over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Now, here's the problem with this. Let's put drugs in its place. Your mind doesn't have the capacity to conceptualize that you are powerless. Because, well, what you are, you do have power. You have power because you could get this stuff, and you're going to need it because you got to take care of functioning as a person, if you want to use that term loosely, function as an individual. So it's kind of hard reaching the stage where you admit. Now that's the first step, is admitting you have a problem and that you need help. Very, 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 very few people genuinely, they might say it for the record, as we say, but in their heart of hearts, it's a hard thing because, it's like something that's impossible to do. Okay, let me use an example. I'm African American, and I have people who are friends who are Caucasian. I cannot be Caucasian, and they cannot become African American. But we can recognize that we are who we are. I'm not talking about the diversity and accepting each other. I'm talking about you are who you are, okay? And you learn to accept for yourself first who you are and not wish you were the other person. Well, that's kind of the same concept we have with people who are on drugs. Those people who are on drugs, they don't spend the time trying to determine that they want to be somebody else. They become who they are. Their whole life, their mind, their lifestyle is altered. So guess what they end up crawling into? They relate to that drug culture. And as a result, it creates devastating effects, cuts them off from those who are not. And one of the reasons that it's bad is people get hurt, innocent people, such as crime takes place, robbery, burglary, theft, all kinds of violent crimes take place because these individuals are trying to support their habits. They don't want to hurt nobody. They just want to live, if you want to call that living. So what I'm trying to say is that I guess that when we start talking about these 12-step programs, to get off the ground even with step one is absolutely an almost impossible thing. I never use the word impossible. I'm a Christian, so I have other reasons. But even if I wasn't, I would still operate on facing reality. Let me say this, that statistically, the odds are definitely against an individual once they get into that lifestyle, of coming out of that lifestyle and reverting back to the way they were before. That's the situation. So anyway, so then you come to number 2, believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That's when we get to the spiritual sides of it. And unfortunately, what happens is that when you get cut off at number 1, you never make it to number 2. But if you do make it to number 2, number 1's still going to be there, and you're going to have this battle between, should I do it? Do I want to do it? I need to do it. No, I don't need to do it because it's going to hurt me, but my body says I got to have it. So you have this whole back and forth. And so whatever the powers that be that can restore you to sanity, you tend to listen to that less than you really should. And I've heard people make a statement, and I get upset when they say this. They say they should understand. Okay, here's the deal. You take a newborn baby and you explain to them about driving a car or anything. And that baby doesn't understand you. That baby's not communicating with you. That's the same situation that these individuals are in. So then we who are not in that situation have to guide them and help them and continue, not to give up on them, not to quit. And that's unfortunately what happens. Number 3, make a decision to turn the will our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Look, listen to me. Your will, one of the things that happens with drugs and alcohol is whatever free will that you had, and I did say had, is either diminished or gone. Yeah, it's not there anymore. It's replaced by, I got to have this. I got to have it. And whatever it takes to get it, to borrow a line from Malcolm X in his book that I read and the movie I saw, by any means necessary, you're going to end up getting this drug, this fix. And so that's how your 24 hours of the day, that's how you live. And it's like you never reach the 25th hour, which I already discussed with you all about reaching me. There is no such thing in reality. There is no 25th hour. Whatever you don't get done in 24 hours is called the next day. And so what I'm trying to get across is that their whole life of the individual, imagine living in a miserable state with no breaks. Even the sleep that you get is not a break, because you're going to crash and then you're going to wake up and you're going to have a side effect if you wake up. So it gets to be problematic. We get theoretical with all of this stuff, but I'm here in this class. We in law enforcement need to, as that police officer in that movie that we just got through watching stated, we got to help these people as much as we can. So we try to take away something that we see that would hurt them. And that's what she was pointing out. Taking the cooker away is not the big issue. Taking the drug away is the big issue. Not arresting them is going to maybe say, well, if you leave them, they're going to go get some more. Well, guess what? That's the same exact thing you have in a situation. If you have a child and you take something that's poisonous away, they're going to go find something else. But they're not trying to hurt themselves. They're just operating in the dark, and that's the best possible way I think that we can put it. Number 4, it says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to other human beings the nature of our wrongs. Again, heavy stuff here for individuals who are in that state. Yeah, we're not. So we look at this and we say, yeah, we understand. But does a baby understand everything that you tell them? No. You have to teach them. Well, these people, unfortunately, is not that they're unteachable, but I think that the other thing that I would say is that virtually, and I'm not a doom and gloom person by any means, but they are virtually unreachable. I have a baby sister, had a baby sister, who in 1994 overdosed. And we know what happened to her, because if you heard my story, she was not born when my dad was killed, but she was fathered by the same individual who actually took the life of my dad, who turned out to be my mom's boyfriend, and took her life ultimately. I don't know if she knew that or not, because we didn't tell her. But here's what I'm getting ready to say to you. She never had the relationship of her mother. She was snatched away while she was a little baby. So she battled her whole life, even when we're around us, when not around us. And then ultimately, she ended up in the drug culture, and then was found at home overdosed on cocaine. The point of the matter is that that precious little baby I was holding the day that I got the announcement given to me in 1963 from the police that my mother was dead and her mother was dead. She was a little baby still being breastfed. She doesn't remember any of that. but I can tell you that it had an effect on her as her life, and it ultimately ended in her uh, leaving this world. And the hardest thing I ever had, guys, was as a minister, even as a person, was eulogizing my baby sister. Think about that. That's some heavy stuff there. But it's all because of drugs. I know we're talking about opioids, but I'm trying to say that drugs, period. But boy, this is really, really, really devastating. Uh, so then, number six, uh, uh, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects, shortcomings, and the list goes on. And I'm going to end up having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. Notice this: if you make it to 12, they try to carry out this message to alcoholics and so forth, but applying the same thing here to deal with alcohol, with drugs. So, I'm out when it's 6 minutes past the time, 7:36. So I'm going to just say to you that as I go back to the classroom now, it's been really a very surreal experience to be with you guys this last 6 weeks, uh, sharing my experiences in my profession, understanding what you guys have shared with me through your assignments, discussion posts, and recognizing that we are at war. We are at war. And economically, socially, spiritually, relationally, all the way across the line, this is devastating. And so we who are in law enforcement, those who are in criminal justice and whatever areas that you go in, if you're going into human services, you're still dealing with you heard the name of it is human services. You're dealing with servicing human beings. And you heard the police officer say earlier, she said, the guy who was interviewing her said, so you guys are like social workers. Of course. It's part of the job to be a social worker as a law enforcement or a police officer. Obviously, probation, parole officers, those are roles. But law enforcement, as the officer was saying, she said, yeah, I'm out here on the streets with these people and see tragic things. But yes, our thing is as human beings, as we carry this out in our professional experiences, we have hearts and we feel things based on our personal experiences with our loved ones, but also it is a statement that I will say that's true is that we hurt when we see other people hurt, unless we just have a stone cold heart. Your professor here sits and watches Lifetime. I don't even like to watch it. My wife looks at it. I can't watch it long with her. And I see things happen, or I see things happen where something bad has happened to somebody, and I don't even know that person. That may not even be a real person, but a person that's playing a role in a movie or a TV show, and it'll hit me right here in the heart. You guys, can you relate to that? Can you relate to that? You can type that in. Do you relate to that? Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And so the point of the matter is this: is that as we are proceeding through preparing to go out and do whatever we're going to be doing in criminal justice, carry this with you, and remember this situation out here, that the people that you run into, even, that's why I told somebody, don't refer to people as a piece of blank or put them down. They're already down. And your job is to be the professional and to be there to help them. It's not the scum of the earth. They're not the scum of the earth. They're people, good people, these people who are on these drugs, good people who made bad choices, and many didn't make bad choices. They were injured. They started taking painkillers to relieve the pain, and then it graduated into what you see in these videos, and that becomes a way of life. Uh, and so it's a real crisis. And so I'm going to give you a key word, key phrase, and it's very simple. Thank you. That's it. Put that in and you get your points. Okay, cool. Awesome. I see a lot of my, thank you. I see a lot of my students in that class. So thank you so much. Thank you. Hey, do me a favor and do the survey so that my bosses will see it too. Okay. I I have stuff, people say, well, you take a little while to get the grades out. I said, I got 135 students. I find myself sometimes, trust me, I'm sitting here doing my grading, and I just had a student just a minute ago to shoot me a message while I was on here that said, when is this assignment going to be graded? I submitted it last week, and I'm just sitting here saying, yeah, I know. But anyway, thank you again, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being a part of this class. And thank you again. That's I'm being redundant again. That's the key word. And I'll see some of you in the future. Hey, last thing I'm going to say. If you need me after class and you're not in my classes again, which is probably going to happen with most of you, right, Shannon? Absolutely. I try not to be boring, but I try to be entertaining, but also give you an educational opportunity as well to make you better. Just take what you've learned, build upon it, and store it, because that's what I've done. That's what made me who I am today. The bad stuff I ran into in life is part of helping me to become who I am today as well. And so I tell students all the time, take the good with the bad, enjoy. So good night to you guys, and I'll see some of you after a couple of weeks off. So have a good night.